Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining me. I am really, really excited tonight, and not just because I've been on a diet and now I get to watch cake, although also it's not because of that. I am joined tonight by Sheri Wilson. So Sheri is the cake decorator behind the blog and popular Instagram page, Cake Design by Sheri. She teaches online classes on baking and cake decoration. Sheri lives in Lewiston, Idaho, and we've got some links for you as well. So the website that you can reach Sheri at is cakedesignbysheri.com. She is at Sheri_Wilson_ on Instagram. Facebook is at cake-design-by-Sheri, and YouTube is at Sheri Wilson. So thank you so much for joining me tonight, Sheri. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Drew. Thank you so much for having me. This is such an honor. I don't get to do these super often, so yeah, I'm really, really excited to be here.
That's awesome.
So today I thought we'd do the ready to party cake. We got some buttercream on my book. So this cake is basically a chocolate chip layered cake, and it also has chocolate chip edible cookie dough in between. So something that a lot of people don't know is that you can't, well, a lot of people do know it, but you shouldn't really eat cookie dough, when it's raw, because you might get like salmonella poisoning or something. So the cookie dough in this is actually designed so that you won't get sick. So it doesn't have any eggs or anything like that in it. So it's totally safe to eat. And it's a delicious cake filler.
Excellent.
So, the buttercream that I'm going to use for this cake is the simple vanilla buttercream, and I have tinted it a very bright yellow color. And I like to just kind of beat the buttercream with my spatula for a little while just to get any air bubbles out of it.
Okay.
And that sort of helps to get rid of the air bubbles, but also when you're applying it to the cake, it will apply really smoothly.
Yeah. So with buttercream, is that the best icing to use when we're decorating a cake? Is that a flavor choice? I am a cake novice unless it comes to eating, in which case, excellent.
Yeah. So this is the type that I use most of the time because it's really quick and easy to whip up. It is more on the sweet side, so for someone who doesn't like a really sweet buttercream, you would probably want to use something like the glossy vanilla buttercream in my book. I included a ton of different recipes just for different flavor preferences. But this is the easiest one to make. It's it has a great flavor. So yeah, it's probably one of my favorites.
Excellent. I love buttercream, so I'm no complaints at all. Not that I'm going to get to eat this cake, although.
Well, maybe you could try it, Drew.
I will pass the recipe along to the very, very talented people who work with me. They are all excellent bakers. And
are they really?
Yeah, actually, it's a running joke in the store that for the holidays, we do I celebrate Hanukkah, and so they do the 8 bakes of Hanukkah, and I get like cookies and cake. It's really, they're much nicer to me than I probably deserve, although don't tell them that.
That is so cool. So what's some of your favorite things that they make during the holidays?
Oh gosh, okay, I think that I would be doing a bad job if I didn't mention there are these gingerbread cookies that, yes, as they're these gingerbread cookies, although they're not actually gingerbread, they're like a type of gingerbread. It's like a gingery snap. I don't know. Someone smarter than me will probably say what they are. And then someone else who works with me has this book of Christmas cookies from all over the world. And so it's like, here are the Christmas cookies in Austria, and here are the Christmas cookies in Japan, and here are the Christmas cookies from and so she'll bring in, these different Christmas cookies, and the ones from Japan had like strawberry and shortbread. They were really good, so those two are probably the two best ones, I'd say. And brownies. I do a lot for brownies.
That sounds amazing. I think that's probably going to be on my wish list this year, is to get one of those, international baking books.
Yeah.
Try something new every day.
So what tool are you using, and what are we doing here?
So this is the cake scraper. It's an acrylic one. You can get them made out of all different kinds of things, but my preference is acrylic. And now that I've applied, oh, I'm sorry, you can't really see that very well, can you?
I can see the top. Oh, there we go. Yeah. Okay.
Oh, I didn't even realize it had cut the whole top off.
Neither did I. I was like, oh, it's the bottom of the cake. That is a very large, delicious looking cake. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, that's a lot bigger. Okay, so I'm just, once I've applied the buttercream, I'm just going to scrape around to try to smooth it out and get a nice clean surface. And you can really become a perfectionist doing this, but you don't have to go too crazy. Just get nice and smooth. And it does help if your cake is cold, because that buttercream is going to kind of become pasty, and it's just a lot easier to smooth out than when it's warm.
Gotcha. Okay.
Never try decorating a cake in the summertime. It's not fun.
Yeah. When I was a kid, my family didn't let me try decorating cakes to begin with, regardless of the season. That just was, they're like, no, not true. We don't. Invite them once it's done. Which is probably
I need to get better about letting my kids try, because I don't really like making a ton of mess in the kitchen, but I really should give them more chances.
You know what? I think that that makes sense. I hate when there's a mess in my kitchen. Honestly, it's the little baking I will do. I hand make pasta, and there's flour everywhere always, and it's such pain. So yeah, we have a comment from Sarah in the chat. Sarah wants to say, it's very hard, everything melts. I assume that's in reference to working with buttercream in the summertime.
Yes.
Okay, that makes sense to me. It wouldn't occur to me had I not started watching the Great British Baking Show and seeing
right, and that's in the middle of summer, isn't it?
Yeah, I think I'm not sure. Like I said, it's a brand new thing for me, so I'm enjoying it though.
Right. If you think about, a stick of butter, if you leave it out and it's hot out, in the room, it's going to just melt. That's exactly the same thing that happens to buttercream.
Okay.
So, yeah, chilled buttercream always works better.
Yeah. No, I'm a fan of chilled buttercream, warm buttercream. I don't care. It's frosting. I'm a very simple creature.
The funny thing is, my family actually doesn't like cake anymore.
What?
Like, I think we've just had so much cake for the last 4 years that nobody really feels like cake anymore.
Okay. I mean, that's fair. I get it. And so for birthdays, is it birthday pie, birthday baklava? Like, what's the...
So my son requested an ice cream cake this past year, and it was... Yeah, he didn't even want me to make it. He just wanted it from the store, like just a regular ice cream cake. I think it was a Reese's ice cream cake, and he loved it. So I guess that's fine.
Yeah. So do you find among your friends and family that, whenever there's an event and someone needs a cake, they're calling you? They're like, hey, can you maybe make, have you had the wedding cake yet?
I have tried to stay away from wedding cakes just because they stress me out. Like, I would not want to mess up somebody's big day like that if something were to go wrong. But I've definitely done my fair share of birthday cakes, anniversary cakes, everything in between. I'm just going to pop this in the fridge just to let the buttercream chill just a little bit.
Gotcha. Okay.
So.
Yeah. You have a wonderfully great, adorable, clean-looking kitchen. I'm very jealous. I feel a little called out by it. Like, everything seems to have its place. You went with white in the kitchen just to flaunt how clean it is. That's impressive.
Well, I'll let you in a little secret, Drew. This is actually not my kitchen. This is like a studio setup.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. So we have very specifically placed things just so that I can do videos and live streams and classes.
Nice.
So, yeah. If you saw my real kitchen, you'd probably
I'd feel a little bit better about myself.
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit while we wait for that to chill about sort of the process of how you got here. Where did you start baking? How did it become your primary thing in life? What's going on there? What's your story?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a crazy story. So my husband has, let's see, 11 siblings. He's got a lot of siblings. And so when we got married, because I wasn't really opposed to baking, I enjoyed it, I became the designated birthday cake decorator.
Okay.
So I very quickly gained a lot of experience and just practice trying out, different designs. And every birthday I'd get to try out something new because, boys and girls of all ages. And I had 2 kids and then kind of, let it go for a little while. I didn't pick up a frosting tip for a long time. Mm-hmm. And then about 4 years ago, I really wanted to figure out something to do because I was bored at home with 2 young kids. And I just started getting back into the cakes again. Posted everything that I made on Instagram just as kind of a visual diary of what I was learning and making. And I would get on YouTube and watch endless videos and tutorials. And that's kind of how I started. That's how I learned. And it just grew from there.
Very cool. We have a question here from the live stream chat. Do you have a favorite design?
In the book?
I would assume that's what they mean.
Let me see.
Or is it's like asking you to pick your favorite child. You're like, ooh, I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know what my favorite would be. I really enjoyed making this one, the neon lemon print.
Okay.
But let me see.
How did you? And maybe I'm spoiling what's going to come next. How did you do the neon with that? That's super bright.
Yeah. So it's basically just a lot of food coloring. I like to use the Chef Master gels. That's what I mention a lot in the book. But yeah, just as long as you have a decent quality food coloring, you can get some really great bright colors.
Perfect. Yeah. All right. Well, I hope that answers your question about favorite designs. My personal, not that you're asking, but my personal favorite cake design is the one that I can eat very quickly and with no one watching, so I can just shame eat the entire cake. And just, like a big python, unhinge my mouth and eat it.
No shame in that.
Yeah, no. Let's see. Have a comment. That cake looked like Lisa Frank. Okay.
Yes. Yeah, that was the inspiration behind the cake, actually.
So for the uncultured person that I am, Lisa Frank is...
So if you remember in the 90s, there was kind of a trend of, this style with the bright...
Oh, wow, yes.
And lemon print. Yeah, so the creator of that design, her name is Lisa Frank, and she's just a famous artist.
Cool.
And yeah, she's pretty cool.
I was going to say, I remember that being a thing. I don't remember necessarily whom it was. So that does not look like buttercream, or it's based on consistency. Right,
so this is actually white chocolate ganache, and it is just a mixture of white chocolate and heavy cream. And I've added a little bit of pink food coloring to it to make it pink. And this is what I use to pour the drips onto the cake.
Okay.
So I'm actually just going to test a little bit of it. And this recipe and all of the troubleshooting for ganache is also, of course, in my book. But what I like to do is just pour a little bit onto the edge of a glass.
Okay.
And you can kind of see how far it'll drip down. And, if it's too runny, it'll go all the way down the glass, and you'll probably want to do some troubleshooting at that point. But if it just kind of gradually dribbles down the cup like that, that's probably a decent consistency to pipe onto the cake.
Gotcha. So we've got a question from the live stream. What makes a ganache?
So ganache is just chocolate and cream. So for this one, it is Ghirardelli white chocolate and a little bit of heavy cream.
Okay.
You can also do it with dark chocolate, and then you've got the dark chocolate drips.
So if I have a cake and it's like a chocolate ganache cake, that just means it's chocolate and cream. That's
right. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So you can make it like runny to use as a drip. You can also use it as a frosting.
Mm-hmm.
I included a couple of ganache recipes if you wanted to frost a cake with it in the book. So yeah, it's super, super yummy and very rich.
Yeah, no, I'm very intrigued by frosting a cake in chocolate. You have my attention.
So for this, to fill the piping bag, I've just placed the piping bag inside a glass and folded the edges over the glass. And then I just poured it in. So that's kind of an easy way to fill a bag without making a huge mess.
Gotcha.
And you can just pull it out. Okay, that cake should be ready. I'm just going to get it.
Oh,
so if you add the ganache while the cake is kind of warm, it's probably going to melt that frosting. So
Gotcha.
it's nice to have a cold cake, and it also helps the ganache to set as it's dripping down.
Yeah.
So just a few little tips.
No, that is what we are here for. That and the glorious watching of cake. That's 99% of my motivation in life is food.
It's very therapeutic to watch.
Yeah. So speaking of therapeutic, obviously we have to talk about the home baking craze that took over the world, I think, in light of the pandemic, and how we all were trying to soothe by making sourdough starters or baking or whatever the case may be. So how did that, and I know we sort of talked about this before the show, but how did that impact your cake decorating, food baking journey? Was it, you got into some new stuff, you got to really experience showing off to new people? What was going on there for you?
So I think when the pandemic hit, it was an interesting time because my husband kind of stopped working. He came home and just like for a lot of people, they lost their jobs and all those kinds of things. And that happened to my husband. He decided to, instead of try to find something else, just come home and help me turn my cake thing into a full-blown business. So before that, it was just kind of an ongoing thing that I enjoyed doing. It wasn't really a business at that point. But that's when we really started to figure out what we wanted to do long term. And I started doing a ton of classes. Every week we'd do live streams. And that's kind of how I got into writing the book, actually. So once we had, I think it was April of 2020, I started writing Caketopia, and that took up most of my time.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So
yeah.
With the writing process, what was that like? What's it like, writing a more of an instructional book as opposed to, traditional fiction or nonfiction?
Well, I'm going to say, I don't have a lot of experience with writing. So, I mean, I've written recipes, I've done a few blog posts, but I really wasn't very experienced. I hadn't ever written a book before. So it was an incredibly big learning experience for me.
Yeah.
And the instructional part I'd say it was actually quite difficult because there aren't a ton of examples out there that you can just go and look at and see like, oh, okay, this is how you write a book like this.
Yeah.
It was sort of its own thing. So I think in that way it was challenging.
Yeah, makes total sense. All right, so now we're drizzling the ganache.
Yes, so I'm just going along the edge and I'm just allowing some of the ganache to drizzle off the edge like this. And yeah, you can make them longer or shorter just by varying the pressure that you pour it on.
So you mentioned that even though people aren't as enthused by cake anymore because we're all kind of caked out, I guess, at the house. Do you still have like people lining up to help with the cleanup? Because as a kid, that was my favorite thing. Was like, oh, someone has to clean the bowl. Oh no! Look at all this frosting that got everywhere. Or is that kind of fallen into the whole? It's every day. We have cake batter every day.
Well, I think now as I get into making different desserts, not just cake, I think my kids are a lot more interested, and they want to try the brownies and the cookies and all the different things because it's just something new every day. But if it's just cake, I think they're a little tired of that, and they don't really care for it anymore. But
yeah. Another question from the live stream. What was the moment that you went, wow, I can make this my career?
Oh, wow, that's a great question. I think, I saw a lot of people online in the baking community. They had YouTube channels, they had blogs, and I really admired those people that I learned from. So I think, all along, I could see that people were making a business out of it. I just didn't know how to do it. Mm-hmm. And I think when my husband came home, I just had to figure it out. So I guess, like, from the beginning, I thought it was possible to turn into a business. Mm-hmm. But yeah, once my husband came home, that was definitely the point where it had to be a business.
Yeah. So we've got a comment here, which I'm going to turn into a question. So the comment is, wow, she has a definite aesthetic. So the question I'm going to turn that into is, how would you define your aesthetic when it comes to your designs?
I think that I would say, colorful, mm-hmm. or, I don't know. People describe it as colorful, creative, kind of out of the box. Mm-hmm. That's a term people use a lot of the time.
Yeah.
So I think as people have kind of pointed that out, that I have a colorful aesthetic, I just have kind of continued that and leaned into that. Mm-hmm. And I just like things that are bright and, make you feel happy.
Yeah,
so.
No, I see the beautiful rainbow cake over your shoulder there. It's just, what I think are gumballs maybe. I don't even know what those are.
These?
Yes, those.
Yes, gumballs. So I guess a lot of my inspiration comes from, Willy Wonka. If you were to walk into a candy shop, I really just, anything that reminds you of that as a kid, eating candy. Yeah, that's definitely an inspiration.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I love it. I love the sort of, very natural feel. Like, looking even just at the ganache dripping, like it's all very natural. It's not uniform. You're not like, each one is 8 centimeters. And then I stop, and there's a line. You're like, nope. Like they kind of go until they're done. It looks great.
I envy the very precise people who, they can make something look absolutely flawless. But that isn't really my strong point, to make something look flawless. So I just kind of run with it, and it turns out as it turns out. And sometimes there are, there's never a mistake. There's just happy accidents.
Yeah.
So.
No, that's I dig it. You got to channel your inner Bob Ross or your outer Bob Ross, as the case may be. All right, so now we're moving into a tray. What's going on here?
Yes, so I have kind of a deep baking dish here, and I'm putting it in here because I'm going to add some sprinkles to the bottom of the cake. Ooh. So these are just like some chunky rainbow sprinkles. I'm not sure if
that's
you can see
a sprinkle. Those things are huge. Sprinkles are like itty bitty little things. What?
Yeah, the large balls are actually made out of chocolate. So
okay, I was like, what? I don't even know what happened if I bit into that. Like, would it just be sprinkle? That's crazy.
Yeah, they're pretty big, but they're so fun. So I'm just applying them to the bottom, and it's a good idea to do this while the cake is still somewhat cold. If you let the cake sit out, and it'll form somewhat of a crust,
okay.
Buttercream will, and then it's dry and you can't really add the sprinkles. So,
how much would you say? And this is probably a very silly question, but how much would you say temperature has to do with in decorating the cakes?
It actually has a ton to do with it.
Okay.
That wasn't really something that was brought up to me as I was learning. But as I've gotten into learning cake decorating myself, it was definitely something I noticed. There were multiple times that I would take a cake to an event and we'd be in a really warm car, and by the time we got there, the frosting was, it had completely melted off the cake. So those were some very hard learning experiences for me.
Yeah.
And just like that, learning through trial and error, you learn that you can't transport a cake in a really hot car.
Mm-hmm. Now, did I hear you right that you went to cake decorating competitions? Or did I mishear that? Okay.
No.
Sorry, that's what I thought you said, and I went, really? That's a thing? Okay, like I'm missing my calling in life. I need to be a judge at a cake decorating competition. That is my jam.
They do have some kind of like the Great British Bake Off that you were talking about. They have some, cupcake wars and cake decorating wars, but I'm honestly not a massive baking show fan. They just kind of stress me out.
I get that.
Yeah.
I could see that. I could see that being very stressful. I feel stressed, and I don't even know what's happening half the time. They're just like, they're like, oh no, it's not setting, and I go, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Right, so
I think just knowing the first-hand stress and trauma that would bring, it's too stressful for me.
I get it. But now, so we have this beautiful, shiny, crazy multi-gem looking bottom. I love it. Okay.
Yeah. So we move this tray, and now to finish the cake off, I'm going to add some swirls on top. So I have this piping bag filled with blue buttercream and I like to call them French tips. This is just a Wilton 8B tip.
Mm-hmm. So what does that do as opposed to the other piping bag where you just sort of snip the bottom? What's the difference? What's the goal?
Okay, so let me show you quickly.
Yeah.
This one, depending on which tip you have, it's going to come out with a different pattern.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you can see that, but it's
the texture there.
Yeah, it has a really pretty texture to it. And whereas the piping bag that I just snipped off, it's just going to come out in a line. So this is just to create the texture, and there's a ton of different types of piping tips that you can get. So let me see if I can move this a little closer.
Mm-hmm.
And to make a swirl, you basically just create a spiral and then continue upwards.
Okay.
So.
Yeah. Reminiscent of my days at Dairy Queen. I mean, not when I worked there, more like when I snuck behind the counter and I got down from Dairy Queen. But yeah, it's the same motion. It's that swirl and then little...
Yeah, it's like an ice cream swirl, exactly.
That is awesome. So, for yourself, what is your favorite dessert?
My favorite dessert I'm pretty simple. I like chocolate chip cookies and brownies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I'm not really complicated. If you gave me a chocolate chip cookie, I'd be happy.
So no, you're not like needing a baked Alaska or
no
another fancy dessert that I definitely know the name of. It's not like I just know one. I know many desserts that I can name. So chocolate chip cookies and brownies. Okay. So does your husband ever try and bake with you, or is it very much like, no, you be over there and I'll be over here, and that way we don't, clash?
I think that if I were less of a control freak, he would probably have so much fun baking, but I don't think it's really his bend.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he probably would enjoy it, but he'd probably rather just play a video game than bake a cake.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, no, I have learned that cooking for me, when it's just me cooking, is super stress-free and it's high relaxed. But as soon as someone's like, let me help you, I'm like, oh, please don't. Please be anywhere but where we are right now. Just not in that space.
Yes, that is me as well.
Yeah. So I see we're putting cherries on. What kind of cherries are we using?
These are maraschino cherries.
Ooh, okay.
And they're the ones that come in the little bottles filled with syrup.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think. You can get them on ice cream and on Shamrock shakes.
Yes, or you can just get them with a spoon, open a jar, and just sit there like a giant candy bear and be like me and eat a jar full of candy cherries.
My daughter absolutely loves these. She'll just eat them. Yeah, she'll just eat them straight out of the bottle.
Yeah. when I was a younger person, because it happened also 3 weeks ago, and I was younger then. I used to love getting Shirley Temples. That was like my favorite thing. And the best part was they have the cherries in there, and you fish them out. And it was a whole thing. So I love maraschino cherries. That looks incredible. Yeah. Oh my God, what is going on? Look at that.
So yeah, that's kind of the cake. It's just, a few simple elements. I like to keep it pretty simple, not too crazy. And I'm gonna add just a little bit of sprinkles to the top as well. Yeah. Not that you guys can see that, but
we'll know now.
Show you. It's really cool.
Now we'll know it's there. So whilst you do that, let me ask: do you find it hard? Like, you've made this beautiful work of art that is meant to be destroyed and eaten. Is that hard for you? You're like, I've made it, but I can't watch you cut it. You cut it and just bring me a piece later, or are you just like, nope, give me that knife. Let's do this thing.
I'm not going to lie, there are a couple of cakes, particularly the painted cakes. I do have a couple in here, but those ones are a little more difficult to cut into, just because it takes sometimes hours to make these cakes, like this one.
Oh, wow.
They're really fun to do. They're very therapeutic, but those ones are difficult to cut into. The rest of the cakes, anything else, I actually enjoy cutting into them at the end.
Yeah.
So,
we have another comment that I'm turning into a question. The comment is, that looks so fancy, but also so doable. So that actually lends itself to a super interesting question, which is, when you were putting in the designs you wanted to do for your cakes for the book, how did you balance? Because obviously, you're an expert. You've been doing this for years. How did you balance bringing in things that are really beautiful and attractive and people want to aspire to do, without it being so technical that people, unless they've got years of experience, are going to be able to do it?
Right. That was definitely my intention for the book, was for beginners to be able to make a cake that looks absolutely amazing and really, unique, to be able to make that without needing a ton of skills and without needing a ton of, extra equipment and little, I don't know. I just wanted it to be simple and straightforward for people to do.
Yeah.
So that was definitely my intention. This is probably one of the simplest tutorials in the book. I think anybody could do it. Even my daughter has made a cake like this, and it's very simple to do.
So, okay, so your daughter, how old is your daughter? I want to know how called out I should be feeling. You're like, a 7-year-old did this. I'm like, oh, great.
She's 5.
Okay, so if I can't do this, it is 100% on me. That's what I'm hearing.
No, I think if you just knew the steps, you'd be totally fine. And there are a few shortcuts that you can take as well. Okay. For instance, for my daughter, we used a pre-made drip. So it just comes in a bottle and you can warm it up and then just pour it onto the cake. So, there's a lot of things that a lot of shortcuts you can take to make it easier. And if you're just beginning, I'd highly suggest, it doesn't have to be perfect. You can take a few shortcuts and just have fun with it.
Yeah. We have another question from the live stream. Are there any vegan recipe ever? I assume in the book is what you're trying to ask, but if I'm wrong, comment, let me know.
I don't think I have any vegan recipes. Okay. Most of my buttercream recipes and all of the cake recipes do have dairy. But I'm actually working on, swapping out some of the ingredients and seeing how they work with vegan alternatives. So I think that would be doable, and just using the recipes as kind of a template, but just making alterations.
Absolutely. All right. So, this cake is completed. What's its fate? What's going to happen to this cake now?
Well, I was thinking we could cut into it and take a look at the inside, because you got to cut the cake at the end of the day.
I think so too. I'm all about that.
It's pretty tall, so I'm not sure how clean of a cut I can make. But.
Yeah. So if you're serving a cake that size, is it just one slice, or do you cut it in half, or how would you do this?
Actually, that's a really good point. So I don't have what I'd normally use. Normally, I'd use a large what do you call it, cutting board. And what you do is you'd slice it down this way. Instead of slicing a triangle out of it, let me show you. You just slice it lengthways.
Ooh, okay.
This
sort of like
is
a
not
cake
a very...
trencher almost.
Yeah, so you're getting long pieces like this.
Oh, that looks incredible.
And then you can just cut it down the middle. And then you have your individual slices like this.
That looks so good. Yep.
So that's the inside.
That is delightful. So how long does it take you to bake, to do this cake from beginning to end? What's this process look like?
To do the baking part?
Yes. From all the way from, I mean, we've seen the decorating. Decorating looks like it takes probably 20-ish minutes. But with baking included, if I was like, I'm going to make this cake for someone, how much time do I need? Is it 6 hours? Is it 10? For me, it's probably 10, but you know.
It's probably going to take maybe 20 minutes, or, you know, I guess it depends how quick you are in the kitchen, but I'd say 20 to 30 minutes to prepare the batter, and then it's about another 30 minutes to bake it. So you'd probably want to give yourself a good hour just to bake the cake.
Okay.
And then you'll also want to cool it for a couple of hours and make sure it's completely cold before starting to decorate.
Yeah. That seems eminently doable, which means that no doubt I'm about to soon ruin my kitchen. So
I would love to see how you do, Drew. I think, you know, you don't know until you try.
Oh, you're right. I mean, and by the way, in the spirit of trying, and you know, I've got your book. I'm going to give it a try. I will send you, and only you, pictures of what ends up happening. It will be sad, I promise.
Well, hopefully, yeah, if you read
no fault of your book. It'll be my fault, 100%. I will just be unable to understand. I'll go, I tried, I got confused, I ate the batter, I don't know what happened. So let me ask you a couple questions, if I can, real quick, about sort of the writing process and moving off. So you had this Instagram account. You're getting people who are watching. They're interested. You're getting engagement. At what point did you approach someone with a book idea? Were you approached by someone? What was that process like?
So, yeah, it was during the pandemic, like I said, and it was really interesting because it was just as my husband came home, we were like, what are we going to do next? We don't really have a plan. And then Page Street actually just reached out to us out of the blue and asked, you know, are you interested in writing a book? And it was really just completely out of the blue for me. I didn't even know who Page Street was, but I spoke to my editor, Franny, and she was just so awesome. Like, we hit it off immediately, and I think, yeah, we've become friends through the process, which is kind of a rare thing, I think, to have with your editor. But yeah, she's really awesome, and she really helped me through the process, start to finish.
What are a couple of things that you learned or you didn't expect when you were writing this book? You went, oh, I'm going to show them my pictures and go, we're going to make these, and then I'm going to include the instructions. What did you learn along the way?
I think I just learned, you know, teamwork, because my husband helped me with the entire thing. You know, he helped with all the photography. We did it ourselves, which was a huge undertaking. I'm not sure if we'd do it again. It was a major undertaking. Yeah. But definitely learned teamwork, learned a lot of patience, and also just learned how hard I'm able to work. Like, I didn't realize how much work I can actually get done if I put my mind to it. So that was a great revelation, and it's kind of become a benchmark for me now. You know, I know that I'm able to accomplish this much, so I should be able to get this job done.
Yeah,
so.
Excellent. All right, so I'm going to try and limit myself to 3 final questions, because otherwise we will be here all night. All right, first final question. Is there, you know, I feel like when I talk to people who've written books, they always say that writing the book changes them in some way. You know, they learn something from it or they're changed by it. But I want to twist it a little bit and specifically talk about your baking and your decorating. How were those changed by the writing of this book?
I definitely learned a lot out of the recipe development aspect of it. I was great at decorating cakes, but my recipes did need a little bit of work when I started writing the book. And just, baking and creating these recipes hundreds of times over, troubleshooting, I think that really gave me an appreciation for what goes into a recipe, how these blogs work, all the work that goes into that. So yeah, definitely my recipe development improved a lot.
Very cool. Okay. Yeah, no, it's always fascinating to me. Everyone who does creative pursuits like this, you're changed by the process of creation, I think.
Yes, definitely.
That's my first. So my second question is there, normally I'd say, is there someone who's reading you really enjoy, or someone who's writing you really, really like, or a book you're really into? But again, I'm going to flip it a little bit and sort of go, hey, are there any cookbooks or baking books that you really enjoyed reading, or that you went, oh wow, I loved this part? What have you been reading that you liked?
Yeah, well, when I first started writing the book, I bought maybe 10 to 20 cookbooks because I really wanted a well-rounded cookbook when I wrote it. So some that come to mind is Catherine Sabbath. I don't know if you've heard of her. She's an amazing cake decorator, and I really took a lot of inspiration from her work and just the simplicity of the way that she wrote it. Let me think. There was another cookbook that just came out when I started, and it's by... I can't think of the name now. Yeah, sorry, I can't think of the name,
okay,
but
yeah.
There were definitely a lot of people that I just bought a ton of cookbooks, and I thought, that's not how I really want the book to turn out, and this is really how I'd like to style it after. So, yeah, there was definitely a lot of that.
Yeah. And then my final question is, if you can, tell us, are you working on anything new? Is there another cookbook coming? Are we, is cakes, or is cookies and pies the next plan? What's next for you?
Oh, good question. There's no talk of a next cookbook yet. Obviously, my editor has mentioned it if I'd want to do it in the future, but at this point, I feel like I need a little bit of a break in between just to, regain my senses.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'm just working on creating a YouTube channel, expanding my social footprint and getting a lot more into recipes, putting out a lot more recipes and videos. And yeah, that's what I'm working on at the moment. Nothing crazy exciting, but it's exciting to me.
Yeah, hold on. Don't sell it so short. I think that's very exciting. All right, so speaking of selling, this is the part where I have to shamelessly plug the bookstore. So this is also where our viewership numbers, we're up here, and then woo, everyone's like, oh, he's talking? Never mind, we don't care. No, so if you liked this show tonight and you went, gee, I'd like a book about cake decorating and making delicious food, and I want to bake things, you can get this book. You can get Sheri's book right there, and you can get it at Town Book Center. We're located in Collegeville, Pennsylvania. We are right across the street from the largest Wegmans in the country. If you are not comfortable going out shopping yet, or you're just not in Pennsylvania but you want to support us anyway, you can always get that book. You can always get the book from us at townbc.com. It's TOWNEBC.com. So, Sheri, thank you so much for being with me tonight. I really enjoyed watching the cake. I get to now have oatmeal for dinner, and I'm going to pretend it's the cake. So thank you again.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. This was really fun. I'm glad we got to chat, and hopefully I'll be out to meet you and the team at some point soon.
Absolutely. We would love to have you. All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone, for coming out tonight, and have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.